You might think that you accidentally paused the video. That's incorrect. We are experiencing rubber banding here. It might even crash now, who knows? Oh no, not this time. Goodo. Right, so Diablo 4 is finally out. I was extremely excited for this one because I'm a massive fan of the franchise and have been playing since Diablo 1. I remember wetting my breeches for the second time in my life after seeing this.
Fresh meat.
The first time was because of seeing this guy on TV. I've played Diablo 1, then Hellfire, then Diablo 2, then Lord of Destruction, Diablo 3, Reaper of Souls, you name it. I even tried my best to enjoy Diablo Immortal, but that didn't work out despite the fact that I'm rich as shit. That was sarcasm, by the way. That's why it was very important for me to make this video. Diablo 1 is the game that kinda introduced me to gaming without any exaggeration. Back then we had like Team Duke Nukem 3D and Team Diablo. I was Team Diablo and Team Duke Nukem 3D was a bunch of redneck buffoons. So the game is out and I have a lot to say about it. Some things are fantastic, some fall short and feel lackluster, and some are downright fucking ludicrous, man. Also, a lot of early reviewers didn't seem to mention most of the game's problems, partially because most of the problems appeared after the early access. Anyways, this is a Diablo 4 worth a buy video and it's spoiler free. Let's see if it's worth buying, shall we? Upon launch, the game meets you with a character class selection screen, which looks like an amazing homage to Diablo 2 character screen. This time you can go with a barbarian, a necromancer, a sorcerer, a rogue, and a druid. My favorite class was always the druid. I liked everything about the druid. He was just like me, wise, looked badass, liked animals, he could turn into animals and wreak havoc with elemental spells. The druid in Diablo 4 looks like a teddy bear. I'm immensely upset. But this chapter of the video is not about me or my feelings. It's about character creator in Diablo 4. It's shit. You can select a body type, one of 4 faces, a dozen haircuts, and utterly boring jewelry and body markings, which is fine, I guess. You won't be able to see your character in detail most of the time anyways. Once you're done picking one of the 4 faces, you are being spat into the world, which looks f***ing gorgeous at times. Seriously, the game looks fantastic. You're looking at it right now. Of course, when it comes to visuals, it's always subjective, but I think Diablo 4 is the best looking Diablo game to date. And I wouldn't say I'm surprised. It looks amazing both from a graphical fidelity standpoint and design-wise. The levels now have some verticality too, and you can traverse between the areas using these connectors marked on your map. I caught myself stopping sometimes just to enjoy the sights. Attention to detail is really good here. It also feels like a Diablo game, if that makes sense. One of my friends who was quite upset with Diablo 3 likes to say that Path of Exile is more Diablo than Diablo 3 is. I can agree to some extent, and I'd like to say that Diablo 4 feels like a Diablo game. Now without the help of sound design. It's good, man. Impact sounds are beefy and crisp, demons are shrieking, skeletons are crackling. Voice acting is also on point and is really good. Even the NPCs that are not important to the story have few lines of dialogue here and there to give you some insight on the situation within the area.
If you ain't cut me loose, you can piss right off.
Music, in my opinion, falls short most of the time and just feels like generic epic fantasy stuff that will work anywhere really. Although some tunes are very distinctive and really hit home. When it comes to combat, Diablo 4 doesn't reinvent a bicycle. It utilizes a classic top-down action RPG formula, tons of enemies, tons of loot, nothing really innovative, which is what I expected really. I'm not disappointed, I'd rather say I'm happy with the way it is. I'm also happy with the progression system. It kind of feels like a mix between Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. You have a skill tree this time, and the more skills you spend, the more new skills you unlock. Every basic and core skill branches out and lets you select one of the two versions of the skill. And refunding the skill points is not expensive, at least in the beginning of the game, so you can experiment all you want. What also is not too innovative in Diablo 4 is the story. Without spoiling too much, the game takes place in the world of Sanctuary after the events of the Reaper of Souls. The antagonist this time is Lilith, one of the creators of the Sanctuary actually. Your character shares a special bond with Lilith that lets you track the demoness throughout the world to prevent another cataclysm. Nothing new, but again, in my opinion, it doesn't have to be. Action RPGs are mostly about action, not the story, but the story is here and it's alright. It kind of felt a bit off during Act 5, like if you remove Act 5 from the game, nothing would really change, but it picks up later on during Act 6. We know that Blizzard are working on 2 expansions for the game, so I'm really curious about the direction they will take later on. They left themselves a lot of space for maneuvers. To progress the story, you need to complete story missions, but you now also have side quests. Most of the time they're simple fetch, bring me 10 bare asses kind of quests. You can find them in any town, city, or sometimes while exploring the wilds. To my surprise, some of them are really good and even form like quest chains. I really enjoyed Sister Octavia's quest chain, for example, it was good. Since I mentioned exploring the wilds earlier, let's talk about exploration in Diablo 4. The maps are not procedurally generated anymore and the fog of war doesn't reappear. Exploration here is still fun though. You can partake in random events that appear in random spots of the map to get some extra XP and loot rewards. Some dungeons randomly appear on the map as well, and it's always worth checking out every nook and cranny. Also, the world in Diablo 2 is huge. I'm playing on PC and the game controls wonderfully with mouse and keyboard, but there's no toggle walk option unfortunately. I decided to try it with a controller and you know what? It doesn't work for me. I'm using a regular Xbox One controller and it doesn't let me remap the buttons. Whenever I press A to attack, it opens up the chat window for some reason, and it doesn't register like half of the inputs. When I open the menu, for example, and try to scroll up or down...
Come on. Bullshit.
It feels like it switches back to mouse and keyboard automatically. At first I thought that my controller was playing up, but no, some players have the same issue with the Xbox One controller or Xbox Elite. I kind of feel like it's much more comfortable with mouse and keyboard anyways, but I still want to have an option to switch between mouse and keyboard and the controller. If you know how to fix this issue, let us know in the comments. As you probably already know, Diablo 4 is an MMO kind of game. That brings us to the first downside of it. You can't play offline, there's no offline mode. The game requires internet connection and that actually adds to the list of issues I have with the game already, and it worries me that it will bring more issues in the future. First of all, look at this. I don't think it's the stuttering caused by poor optimization. The game is very well optimized. I think it's caused by ping, and I'm not the only one who's experiencing this. There's also rubber banding and it happens a lot. In online video gaming, rubber banding is the undesirable visual effect of latency in which a moving object appears to leap from one place to another without passing through the intervening space, also called warping or teleporting. More specifically, as your character runs forward, it will reappear to where it was previously as if a rubber band was attached and snapped the character back. This occurs when there's desync between the system the game is being played on and the online server, where the server keeps resetting the character to a previous point. This sometimes renders the game unplayable, and I'm not even joking. Imagine fighting a boss in a dungeon. Then this happens and you die. You have to start the fight all over again, and if the game crashes on top of that, which happened to me at least 2 times already, you have to start the dungeon from the very beginning. That doesn't sound like my idea of fun. The second downside is microtransactions. And yeah, I think that's exactly the reason why the game has no offline mode. To have microtransactions. Why would you want to buy anything from the in-game store using real money if you're playing offline, right? Now, let's take a moment and talk about it. The majority of players, including myself, hate microtransactions. Diablo 4 has them, and in my opinion, they shouldn't be here. It's not in your face or anything. You get to see one tutorial on how to access shop and where to find purchased items, and that's about it. But come on, man, the base game costs $70, and on top of that there's an in-game store where some bezdelushki cost you as much as $20. Now, as long as it's just the cosmetics, I don't really care. It's optional and it's up to you if you want to spend extra money on the looks. That also doesn't make you a bad person either, but I can see where this might go with season passes, battle passes, etc. It all reeks of corporate greed. Also, the shop button on the top has this annoying unread message type notification that you can only remove by clicking on every single piece of paid content. I know it's not a big deal for some players, but for me personally, with my ADHD, it's a bloody nightmare and it makes me sick. I just hope Diablo 4 will not turn into a microtransaction hellscape. I guess we'll see about that. When it comes to performance, it performs very well. It's very well optimized. Now this might sound like I'm contradicting myself, but hear me out. I think if there was an option to play offline, there'd be no lags and stutters whatsoever. But since it's an MMO, some of us get what we get. Some of my UK friends say that it works like a charm for them. Some friends experience the same issues as I do, so I guess it depends on where you are. Just be aware that this issue exists and it might or might not apply to you. The fact of the matter is, this issue could be a deal breaker for some. Seriously, it's really bad sometimes. As for bugs, I've experienced one weird visual glitch. It looked like this. At one point in the game I lost the ability to skip dialogues, which was fine because it was my first playthrough anyways, but I don't want this to happen on my second playthrough, for example. And that's about it. My Diablo 4 experience was nearly bug-free. I had a few crashes too, and I think it's worth mentioning that like 3 out of 5 times when I exit the game, it just freezes, says the application is not responding, and keeps hanging there pretty much forever. Alt F4 shuts it down, but I don't know. So I made 2 blitz lists with both good and bad things about the game. It might not apply to you, and some things are more jokes than real issues, but here we go.
The bad first.
Some corpses disappear right before your very eyes. Skeleton animations sometimes look like they're in 5 FPS. You can't move while the map is maximized. Rubber banding is terrible, and sometimes it's impossible to beat a boss because of it. Game freezes on exit 3 out of 5 times. You can't pet the dog. Gamepad support is non-existent on PC. There's no travel back to entrance option when you finish the dungeon. Microtransactions. Loading times are ridiculously long sometimes. No offline mode. You don't need to identify items anymore, and it steals the element of surprise.
And the good.
Atmosphere is good. Cutscenes are good. Voice acting is good.
Fallen sometimes shout Rakanishu.
Diablo 4 does a very good job on living up to its namesake. It's like a ticket to childhood that costs $70. Expensive, but cheaper than time traveling or I keep getting this okay, one more level and I'm going to sleep kind of feeling when playing. It's a good feeling that nowadays I experience less and less with modern games. Diablo 4 is not perfect. I'm not even sure if I can say that it's the best Diablo game ever, but I like it and it's very well worth the price. Is it worth buying? Yes, if you are a Diablo fan, you will probably love it, and if you're not, then I'm surprised you're still watching. But thanks for watching anyways, see ya.